Oh, just realized I was muted. The beauty of Zoom and this virtual world we live in. I'll restart that. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me for a very special episode of Remotely. My name is Brian Bonilla. I'm a senior agency reporter here at Ad Age. And today I'll be joined by a very special guest and a unique and an important executive in the industry. Please join me in welcoming Neal Arthur, the global CEO of Wieden+Kennedy. Hey, Neal.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you for joining.
My pleasure, man.
We can dive right into it, man. And we've talked a few times over the past few months about a lot of things going on at Wieden. And I kind of wanted to start this conversation with something that we spoke about not too long ago, which is the global expansion plans for the agency. Now, you recently opened an office in Mexico City, and the agency itself has offices in London and India and Shanghai and many other places. How do you go about, what's the right time to open an office like that, and why Mexico?
I think so. In terms of expansion, I think we're always trying to we want to place that in places that are kind of cultural hubs first and foremost, right? So it's about kind of having dots on the map of the world, and more about being in places that have real cultural and sort of feeling like they're at the epicenter of things that are happening creatively, particularly. And so Mexico City is a place we've wanted to be for years, to be totally honest. We've been kind of looking around passively and actively for 5, 6, 7 years. And with some of the expansion that our partnership with Ford and a couple of other as well, it just felt like it was time. So you're kind of looking for the place and then the moment in time. And Mexico has definitely been the place, and this was the moment in time. And when we think about expansion, again, I think for us, so it's no secret that our whole thing is culture, and a creatively driven culture. And so you want to kind of make sure that you're doing this the right way. So it isn't like it's just kind of, getting more real estate and then throwing bodies in there. It should feel Wieden and this popular that you have Wieden everywhere else around the world. So you want to do it really thoughtfully, and a lot of times it'll take us quite a few years to kind of figure out where we want to go, so that you can know that you've got a real sense of the landscape, who people are, and the cultural fit that's going to be right for you. So for us, it's all led us to Mexico City, and it's kind of a no-brainer for us because Mexico City is just such an incredibly vibrant place, has ever, but certainly culturally and for the industry right now.
Yeah, and we're seeing a few agencies open locations there recently, and even the Super Bowl, had quite a few of their ads shot there as well. Why do you think we're seeing that trend in that area?
Oh, I mean, certainly I'm not an expert, but I think things that we've seen in the pandemic, we've had. There's been a huge sort of Mexico City's been a huge area of growth. I mean, we've had loads of people from, just look at generally where people have kind of left from the U.S. and gone. Mexico City is one of those destinations. And I think it's a really business friendly climate as well. And the connection between South America and North America. And just creatively and culturally, it's an incredibly rich city with incredibly rich history and like a true creative community, tons of sort of art and things that are kind of on the map. So I think just all those things has made it feel like a place that a lot of our clients are talking as well as a place to kind of be creatively and also for the business. So those two things, when those things go together, it happens. But the count on Mexico City has exploded in the last, I'd say, 5 years.
Right, and it also goes into this other aspect that we've talked about before, which was Wieden as a network, right? I think a lot of people, when they think of Wieden, they might think of Portland or they might think of New York as, their own entities, right? But what's been that journey like, maybe in the past few years, of getting Wieden to be considered more of a network and to act like more of a network?
Honestly, it's been, Weiden's been in for a long time, but it has typically felt, I think, if I'm being honest, more independent, like 8 independent offices that kind of all kind of take on the flavor of the cities that they're in, right? Which is great. And there's huge merit to that. But like I think just increasingly in the world that we live in, the flattening of the world through digital landscape, and also just the needs client basis to like have a global brand that lives as a singular thought across the world. It's just more and more of the conversation. We just don't, as it's much more common for us to have a conversation about what it look like globally and consistently across the globe, rather than we want to work with just one Wieden office. Like more and more clients come to us and say, we want to work with Wieden, and then they want to be Wieden to be able to have a solution that can figure out how to make sure that their brand lives and breathes global, consistent, and big and endemic. So I think it's the demand from a client perspective, the flattening of the globe through social and digital media has led us to be much more sort of intentional about connecting our offices and feeling like one network, one Wieden+Kennedy, with different sort of ways to that. So we've, even just kind of, if you look kind of like the moves we've made, from personnel perspective and the way that we're operating, it's all pointing to this idea that it's like one Wieden+Kennedy that's much more deeply connected than maybe we were in the past.
Right. And was that more of a perception thing in your mind, or was that also an internal perception? Like, was it outward or internal? What do you think?
That's a good question. I think it's both. I'll always be honest. Like, I think it's both. I think you tip, if 10 years ago, you would have come through the door of like a singular office through Wieden Portland or Wieden London or Wieden Amsterdam, or whatever the office is. And you would have had a locally based relationship, wherever the core of that client's business is. But again, now I think it's just the world doesn't operate that way. I think there's an expectation that you're going to be building a brand for the globe, not just for a market. And so I think that just kind of the way that it operated, both internally and then both externally and then therefore internally. And I think we've really changed course to make sure that we're operating as a more singular entity as opposed to 8 separate offices now. Because and listen, agency change always happens because of client needs, and the client need has definitely been swinging the pendulum towards kind of big centralized global ideas.
Right. And before I continue, I would like to remind anyone watching that we are streaming live on LinkedIn, and we'd love to hear any questions that you may have, or just shout out where you're watching this from, and we'll try to get to you. And so Neal, you mentioned a lot of changes at Wieden, like the leadership changes recently, and probably the biggest change was the unfortunate passing of your founders, and the 2 founders in I think about a year's time, which is such a incredible thing to happen. I know Wieden had this event in Portland where they basically, you guys invited pretty much any former Wieden employee, current Wieden employee, and special guests to an event out in where the office is. And I kind of wanted you to speak a little bit about what that meant to you and the impact it had for you.
I mean, listen, it was an understatement to say it was massively emotional. I think we never would have anticipated we would have lost Dan and David in the year's time. And when we started to think about how do you commemorate these 2 incredible human beings, it started to be clear that they would have, we think they would have wanted most and would have been proud of is to see the collection of people they brought together over the years. That's what they built this place for. And so we quickly started to think about this less as a memoriam, and a tribute, more as like and hopefully the kind of greatest reunion of all time, And so we just realized this is a moment that everybody who's passed the place would want to participate in and should be able to participate in. And so we invite everybody who's ever worked at Wieden+Kennedy, be there on that day. And we were responsible for the event, but everybody, paid their own way to fly from all over the world to be there, from other agencies. And it was just an incredibly humbling moment, to see all these people who've been touched by these two and have come through this place and have been changed, like, as humans because of it, was just amazing. And I honestly, like, it's like a night like I never experienced in my life. Convergence of so many people that are so near and dear to you and to the place. And it was just really special. And I think it was also just like incredible to see so many people from other agencies, whether it's Jeff Goodby or Glenn Cole or all the, from other agencies that are all part of our world, and just what an honor. And it was incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at some pictures on LinkedIn, and it seemed like there were thousands of people there. I think it was
yeah, I think I don't. You never quote me on numbers, man. But like I think there was 3,000 people there, and the building. I should say this on live stream. I think the building was supposed to hold 500. So we exceeded capacity, but like nobody cared. Like it was like you were at at Coachella. You're packed in, but like there was so much sort of like, for lack of a better way of describing it, palpable love, and appreciation that nobody cared about anything, except for the opportunity to be there that night and to be together. And the whole event was the event was called Thank You, Dan and David. And it was all just a huge sort of celebration and of our appreciation for what they've given us, and it was again really great.
And before I continue, I'd like to give some shout outs to some people watching: Peggy from Mexico, Sarah from Canada, Gustavo from Florida, Anna from Florida, Juan, Scott, and Shihab. Thanks for watching. And shifting a little bit now, that brings me to a thought that I had, which was, we've seen some, besides the founders, we saw Colleen go to Snapchat, and but we're also seeing some additions like Jaya Chow moving from Anomaly to Wieden, New York. So it's, there's some new elevated faces and there's some brand new faces, right? So what is Wieden now, right? And moving forward, what should people expect, from this new Wieden that we're seeing?
Oh, that's funny. I mean, like, I don't. Yeah, no, I don't think it's kind of more of the same. You know what I mean? Being honest, it's like I think the beauty of this is how many people have kind of come through the doors, but have like been here for such a long time that they're and again I'm just the amount of gratitude I have to Dan and David, because created a place that's so clear in its nature and in its intent that it's not like, what's this place all about? It's really clear. And there's so many people here who've bought into that and have been part of that. I've been here for 17 years. My partner Carl's been here for 16 years. So it's really preserving the spirit of the place while allowing it to be flexible enough to show up in different ways, that always kind of morph and change. So it's less wed to the output or just to the input. And so you're being like, what's this new Wieden? I think it's a lot like what Weiden's been. I think the people that we bring in, you mentioned Gia. Gia is one of those people that has felt like a Wieden person for before she started here. You know what I mean? And Colleen's somebody who created space for others to kind of myself, Carl, to kind of follow in her lineage. So I think it's just always kind of it's kind of creating space for it to continue being what it's been, and maintaining the sense, the strength of the brand.
Right. And you guys are also investing in a lot of interesting areas, because I think, Wieden obviously known for creating these big moments in advertising, but you also been investing a lot in social media, for example. Talk about a little bit about why, what you're doing with social media that's standing out for clients, and is it just about waiting for clients to ask about social, or are you being proactive about that?
Yeah. Yes, we are definitely invested in social media, and I think one of the things that we've there's kind of, at least, let me try to break it down in two ways. One is like there's like our creative ideas now. You can't have a creative idea in the world that doesn't have social media at its core, right? So it just doesn't work. Like there's no way where, no matter how much media you put, that a commercial is going to get the sort of cultural breakthrough that we are always looking for, without social media surrounding that, leading up to it, supporting it, around it. So kind of social at the core, I think, are thinking like all the time. And then there's an offering that we've built, JP, John Papetti, and his ECD of Bodega, and Bodega is basically a social first operation within Wieden+Kennedy that looks that's less about kind of just like the management of social assets and as part of a larger campaign, and more about like social content creation. And so we're deeply invested in this. We're deeply invested in and kind of creating like a social lead, and it works very differently. So Bodega works very differently than the rest of the agency, in the sense that the agency works with a brand and has a brief and kind of works from there. Bodega starts with culture. What's going on in the world that we can start to that we can kind of shape and leverage for us to own conversations. And it works at a very different pace. It works for the starting point, and it's all built to have it be socially driven content that is in the voice of, maybe not necessarily the response to a specific brief. So it operates separately, and it's been hugely valuable for us in terms of just driving the sort of creativity and the conversation that we're always looking to do.
What about areas like Web3 and now the emergence of AI? What are your thoughts on those? Are you paying attention to that? What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, we like, listen, we go in on whatever the new things are, because you just can't be a culturally oriented creative company without kind of leaning all the way in. I mean, we've did a ton in with Web3. I think that's a platform that, despite where we are with crypto, and the crypto winter, et cetera, like Web3 is going to be a reality for us for years to come, and it's going to create huge sort of new opportunities for us creatively. Same is said for AI, and like, obviously, it's not, you're not going to go 30 minutes without talking about ChatGPT. But it's like, I think for us, we don't see those as existential threats. We see those as new tools in our arsenal, because we're not into the automation of any ourselves. We're in the idea creation business, and so we're never very. I say this like all humility that it should, but like we believe that the value of creativity and ideas will supersede any sort of new technology. And what we find is that new technology oftentimes makes those ideas better, makes those ideas more scalable, more targeted, and a lot of different things that we would always looking to do.
It's interesting. We had just gotten a question about how you're thinking proactively about generative AI. So, but yeah, I don't know. But I think that pretty much answered it. And, I know we have, we actually have a video that I wanted to play before, this next question. You guys, some of your employees recently created a video, in relation to some of the conversations that have gone on for the past couple of years, especially after the unfortunate passing of George Floyd. Um, you know, Black History Month being, not too far gone. It seems timely, but it's interesting how you guys were able to let your own employees have a voice, right? So I'd like to get into that video, and then we can speak a little bit about that after.
I just remember feeling hot inside.
Why is now the time that you're realizing again that my life matters?
When Mike Brown was murdered, that hit a lot more close to home. I grew up probably 30 minutes away from Ferguson, and that just wrecked me.
My cousin was shot and killed by the police right in front of my grandmother, who lives in Ferguson, down the street from where Michael Brown was killed. So I wasn't surprised.
And the video goes on, but it's an interesting way to put it, Neal. And what's the key for agency leaders to make sure their employees' voices are still heard? I feel like the conversation maybe has muddled a bit over the past couple of years, or maybe the past year, but what's the key to that?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I wouldn't even think about it as employee or employee, honestly. Like, those are my peoples, you know what I mean? Like, that crew came and they just, it's kind of, I mean, if I'm being honest, that crew just said, hey, we're doing this. And we were like, yeah, thank you. You know what I mean? Like, thank you for doing this. I'm just more, I'm kind of always inspired and appreciative that I get to work with every day because of the initiative. Like, for us, it was never even a question of like, is this a thing that goes, it's like, yeah, no, they made it. It's from a personal perspective, and it has to be shared with the world, So I don't know. I mean, I've been here for so long, it's hard for me to understand what it might be like somewhere else. But like, I think mostly when somebody's bringing something that feels so personal to them, you honestly just get out of the way, and try to help if you can. But usually that means the most helpful thing is just say, do you.
Right. Well, the fact that they felt comfortable enough to even bring the idea up, I think is, because maybe other places they might not have been able to. But and do you credit that to the culture that Dan and David created with employees?
Yeah, without a doubt. Like, I always felt like I could talk my shit, and I probably should do that. But like, I always felt like I could say what was on my mind, to anybody, and to them, which is everything. That's kind of, when I started here, like forever ago, I knew this was the place that I could be for the rest of my career, with, knock on all the wood, and because it was the first place I felt like I could genuinely be myself and say the things that were in my head, and I wouldn't get a side eye for it. And that environment, without a doubt, was the one that they created, and one that they were most proud, I think, to be able to foster and nurture along the way. So that's everything. And I think that's the sauce to the place, is that environment exists. It's never looking to, kind of provide mandates or like, try to have a singular sort of style. It's always meant to be defined by the individuals who are here. And that's why, I think that's why it continues to change while still saying the same, because it's the individuals who are here and their voices make it what it is. And so that Wieden of 2023 is different than it would be in 2005, because this new voice, but they're empowered, and hopefully in the same way.
And the other timely topic that, I feel like the past 2 years, I'm always talking about this, which is, remote work versus hybrid work, and, the future of work in general for agencies. We're seeing a lot of agencies move to 2-day models, 3-day models. And, I was curious where Wieden kind of stands on that at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so the honest answer to that is like, we're still kind of figuring it out. I think that this might be, semi-crucial, but like, we are finding that we are for our business and the nature of developing creative ideas, it's important to share space, to be together. Now, we're less dictatorial or sort of autocratic about where that happens. Like, we're not like, oh, everybody has to be in the office Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 or whatever. Like that doesn't really matter to us. But we do think that the collision of people and voices and the dynamic that happens when people are together it's conducive to the work. And since that's our whole thing, like we're getting clearer on that. And so we most of our offices, people are back. I'd say the heat is around Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday generally. Monday catch can. Friday seems like it's gone from offices forever. So rest in peace, Friday. But like it's like we've never made a minute. That's where it's happening naturally. And knock on wood, if you kind of take the health issues aside and the safety issues aside that we experienced during the pandemic, we're now naturally seeing people kind of come back on their own accord and wanting to be around each other because of the energy that it creates. And so it's happening naturally and organically across the network, and it's pretty great, and we are seeing the benefit of people being together. So it's a long-winded way of saying I think we'll be far more flexible than we were before the pandemic, in terms of days and I think that there are certain positions with an agency that the agency will always be remote, but I think that disciplines and people who are kind of core to sort of kind of creating ideas and driving ideas, probably create more space for those to be in person and in any capacity.
And I wish we could talk more about that, but I'm trying to be mindful of the time here. Sure. New business is another hot topic, right? There was a recent report that found, while there were more opportunities last year, the revenue from those opportunities, I think, was 35% less than the year before, right? What are you seeing in the new business landscape right now? Is it more project-based, and does that affect your agency at all?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pretend to be an expert because I'm not in anything, but certainly in this subject. But I think what we're seeing is fewer sort of big pitches for kind of the whole thing. Because I think clients realize that there's a real risk. I mean, I think that it's really hard to get to know agencies and partners in the way that you would reflect your ideal reality in those environments. And what we're seeing more of is kind of a project opportunity comes up. That project being oftentimes a gateway to a more substantial long-term relationship. And so I have a lot of sort of trial right now around what's the best, figure out who's the right partner to be as a client. And what seems to be kind of happening more often, certainly than it has in the past, is project to test and go. You know what I mean? I honestly, I'm a fan. I think I think those are great ways to kind of get each other, because you get a sense of what it's really like to live together, to be partnered, instead of the kind of more artificial dynamic pitch where you can kind of show up as your best self, given the limited time and points,
And do you guys typically pitch for those projects, or how does that come across?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if there's any consistency there. We don't. Again, continue to be probably. It's we rarely pitch for projects. We're kind of selective about pitching generally. What we are open. We love the idea of starting a relationship with some sort of trial engagement, just to kind of see if it works. Because for us, we want to end up in a deck where both partners choose each other and are excited about it. That's half the battle. If you can figure that, if you can kind of, they say with a healthy 90% of it is kind of shared intent to make it work. So any ways that we can kind of figure that out and get in place, I'm open to, and it seems like it's testing right now.
Well, Neal, I think we're out of time. I wish, we could continue this, and we hope to have you back soon. It's been a pleasure chatting about the industry and everything to do with Widen. And thanks again for joining.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. I love talking, and thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
For sure. And anyone there watching, please, if you want to catch more of our remote leads, be sure to log in to check out adage.com/remotely. And I would also like to shout out our Small Agency Awards, which submissions are now open. As always, I would like to thank our Adage crew, Lauren and Anna and Arabella for making this live stream happen. And thank you everyone for watching.